National Electrical Code (NEC) stipulates a minimum clear distance of 3 feet behind electrical equipment solely when the equipment necessitates access to its rear for servicing or repairs. Even that a front access-only panel doesn't demand access to the back, the 3-foot clearance is not obligatory. The NEC explicitly states in 312.4a on working space in front of a circuit breakers, a minimum clear working space of 30 inches wide and 3 feet deep shall be provided in front of circuit breakers operating at 120 volts nominal or more and mounted in a vertical position. These switches, a minimum clear working space of 30 inches wide and 2 feet deep shall be provided in front of switches and circuit breakers operating at 120 volts nominal or more and mounted in a horizontal position. Furthermore, 312.4 at the back of equipment panel states equipment panel shall not require access to the rear. Therefore, since the 3000 amp 480 volt 3-phase service panel is designed for front access only, the 3-foot minimum clearance behind it isn't mandated. The key factor is whether access to the rear of the panel is necessary for maintenance or repairs. If the panel is designed to be serviced exclusively from the front, the clearance requirement at the back is waived. This understanding is crucial for efficient space utilization and compliance with electrical code. Working space in electrical installations is a paramount safety consideration. Sufficient space ensures that electricians can safely and effectively perform their duties, such as inspecting, maintaining, and repairing electrical equipment. The NEC provides specific guidelines for minimum working space clearances around electrical equipment, depending on the voltage level and the layout of the installation. These clearances are designed to protect personnel from electrical hazards and to provide adequate room for maneuvering and using tools. In front of electrical equipment, the NEC specifies minimum distances based on the voltage to ground and the presence of exposed live parts. For instance, for equipment operating at 150 volts to ground or less, a minimum clear distance of 3 feet is typically required. For higher voltages, such as 600 volts, the required distance increases to 3.5 to 4 feet, depending on the conditions. These clearances ensure that workers have enough space to avoid accidental contact with energized components. The width of the working space is also important. The NEC requires a minimum width of 30 inches or the width of the equipment, whichever is greater. This width allows electricians to move freely and perform tasks without being restricted by the surrounding environment. The working space must also be clear and unobstructed. Any equipment, materials, or other objects that could impede access or create a hazard must be removed. This includes tools, ladders, and storage items. Maintaining a clear working space is essential for preventing accidents and ensuring that electrical work can be performed safely. Behind electrical equipment, the NEC specifies minimum clearances only if access to the rear of the equipment is required for servicing or repairs. If the equipment is designed for front access only, no specific clearance is required behind it. However, it is still important to ensure that there is enough space to allow for proper ventilation and to prevent the buildup of heat. In some cases, additional space may be required to accommodate the bending radius of large conductors or to provide access for cable routing. The height of the working space is also a consideration. The NEC requires a minimum headroom clearance of 6.5 feet above the working space. This clearance ensures that electricians can stand upright and move around without hitting their heads on overhead obstructions. The headroom clearance must be maintained throughout the working space, including in front of and behind the equipment. The working space must also be properly illuminated. Adequate lighting is essential for performing electrical work safely and accurately. The NEC requires a minimum illumination level of 10-foot candles in the working space. This level of illumination is sufficient for most tasks, but higher levels may be required for more detailed work. The lighting should be positioned to minimize glare and shadows, and it should be protected from damage. In addition to the general requirements for working space, the NEC also includes specific requirements for working space around specific types of electrical equipment. For example, for switchboards and panel boards, the NEC requires a minimum clear working space of 3 feet in front of the equipment. This clearance must be maintained for the full width and height of the equipment. For motor control centers, the NEC requires a minimum clear working space of 4 feet in front of the equipment. This clearance is necessary to allow for the safe operation and maintenance of the motor starters and other components. For transformers, the NEC requires a minimum clear working space of 3 feet in front of the equipment. This clearance is necessary to allow for the safe inspection and maintenance of the transformer. The working space around electrical equipment must be properly maintained. Any damage to the equipment or the surrounding area must be repaired promptly. The working space must also be kept clean and free of debris. Regular inspections of the working space should be conducted to identify and correct any potential hazards. The NEC also includes requirements for the guarding of live parts. Live parts must be guarded to protect personnel from accidental contact. Guarding can be provided by enclosures, barriers, or other means. The type of guarding required depends on the voltage level and the location of the equipment. In general, live parts operating at 50 volts or more must be guarded to prevent accidental contact. The NEC also includes requirements for the grounding of electrical equipment. Grounding is a safety measure that helps to protect personnel from electrical shock. Grounding provides a low resistance path for fault current to flow back to the source, which causes the circuit breaker or fuse to trip and to energize the circuit. All electrical equipment must be properly grounded in accordance with the NEC. The NEC also includes requirements for the overcurrent protection of electrical circuits. Overcurrent protection is a safety measure that helps to protect equipment and personnel from damage caused by excessive current flow. Overcurrent protection is provided by circuit breakers and fuses. Circuit breakers and fuses are designed to trip or blow when the current in a circuit exceeds a certain level. The NEC specifies the maximum allowable overcurrent protection for different types of circuits. The NEC also includes requirements for the wiring of electrical circuits. The wiring must be properly sized and installed in accordance with the NEC. The wiring must also be protected from damage and corrosion. The NEC specifies the types of wiring methods that are permitted for different applications. The NEC also includes requirements for the installation of electrical equipment in hazardous locations. Hazardous locations are areas where there is a risk of fire or explosion due to the presence of flammable gases, vapors, or dusts. The NEC specifies the types of electrical equipment that are permitted in hazardous locations. The NEC also includes requirements for the installation of electrical equipment in wet locations. Wet locations are areas where there is a risk of exposure to water or moisture. The NEC specifies the types of electrical equipment that are permitted in wet locations. The NEC is a comprehensive set of standards for the safe installation and use of electrical equipment. Compliance with the NEC is essential for protecting personnel from electrical hazards and for preventing electrical fires. The NEC is updated every 3 years, and it is important to stay up to date on the latest requirement. The information provided here is a general overview of the NEC requirements for working space around electrical equipment. It is not a substitute for consulting the NEC itself. Always consult the NEC and other applicable codes and standards before performing any electrical work. In summary, when installing a 3000 amp 480 volt 3-phase service panel, remember that if it's front access only, the 3-foot clearance behind it isn't typically needed based on NEC guidelines.